Investigators found no physical evidence linking Raymond Childs III to the murder weapon. There were no fingerprints, no DNA. In a shocking act of violence, he shot his brother Elijah once in the back of the head while he was simply watching television. Lying next to Elijah in bed was his girlfriend, Kiara Hawkins. In a moment of horror, the defendant shot her once through her right ear. This teenager, in a fit of rage over leaving home without permission, killed nearly his entire family. An Indiana jury has now convicted the 21-year-old Raymond Childs III. He was found guilty of murdering 6 individuals, including a pregnant woman who was on the brink of giving birth, amid what prosecutors described as a deadly argument. We will speak with criminal defense attorney Bob Bianchi to delve deeper into this case and look forward to the sentencing phase. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm your host, Jesse Weber. After a mere 3 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted 21-year-old Raymond Childs III on 6 counts of murder for the brutal slaying of his family members. This conviction followed a previous trial, which ended in a mistrial when a witness confronted Childs directly in front of the jury. Just a day after the horrific crime, the 21-year-old was arrested. Back in January of 2021, he fatally shot his father, Raymond Childs Jr., his stepmother, Kesey, their daughter, Rita, his brother Elijah, and Elijah's 19-year-old girlfriend, Kiara Hawkins, who was pregnant and on the verge of giving birth. One lone survivor emerged from this gruesome attack. Childs' 15-year-old brother, referred to in court documents as XC. Though he was shot, he managed to flee the house, escaping the relentless gunfire. According to the probable cause affidavit obtained by Law and Crime, XC recounted the tragedy to the police as he was rushed to the hospital. When asked who shot him, he named his brother, stating, Raymond Ronald Lee Childs III. The heartbreaking details continued to unfold when medical staff inquired about his parents. XC's response was chilling. He shot them. I think they're dead. A mere 15 years old, XC not only survived, but became a pivotal witness, supplying law enforcement and prosecutors with first-hand accounts of the brutal massacre. But questions lingered in the aftermath of the tragedy. Why? What could have driven Childs to execute nearly his entire family? The answer, as it would emerge, stemmed from a dispute over his desire to stay the night at his girlfriend's home. Childs had left his family's home without permission, heading to his girlfriend's house. According to the probable cause affidavit, J.D., Childs' girlfriend, revealed that on January 23, 2021, Childs III had come over to spend the night. During his stay, he received a phone call from his father demanding he return home. J.D. recounted that between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on January 24th, Childs III drove back to the house in a white Chrysler. Childs III claimed that his father had kicked him out, but that version of events was a deception, as the truth lay in the dark intent that had driven him home to kill his family. On January 24th, Raymond Childs III drove back to the house in a white Chrysler, claiming that his father had kicked him out. However, this assertion was a deceptive facade, masking the sinister truth. Childs had returned home with a dark intent, one that would lead him to murder his own family. Before returning to his girlfriend's house, Charles III concealed vital information from J.D. As fate would have it, a startling phone alert would soon cast a shadow over her doubts. It was a notification about multiple shooting incidents, occurring shortly after Charles III had arrived back at J.D.'s home. J.D.'s heart raced as she received an alert on her Citizens app reporting a shooting on 36th Street. Moments later, another notification flashed across her screen. This time it was about a shooting on Adams Street, the very neighborhood where her family resided. With dread creeping in, J.D. turned to Charles III, questioning him about the unfolding chaos. His response was a chilling denial. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the atmosphere thickened with suspicion. Yet an even more troubling scenario was about to unravel, a harrowing ride that J.D. would take with Charles III. As J.D. drove Charles to another residence in her Chevy Impala, a crucial detail emerged from the affidavit. Charles III had left behind a bundle of clothes tucked away at his feet in J.D.'s car. Upon reaching their destination, he took the clothes with him, but shortly after pulling away, J.D. hit the brakes, and a magazine clip, evidence of a firearm, tumbled forward onto the passenger floorboard. Detectives wasted no time, obtaining a search warrant for J.D.'s vehicle. The recovered magazine clip confirmed their worst fears, leading them deeper into the investigation. With mounting evidence, detectives located Charles and brought him into their homicide office for questioning. Earlier, I mentioned that Charles's younger brother, XC, a mere 15 years old, would emerge as a pivotal witness. Days after the tragic events, detectives spoke with him at the hospital, where he recounted the harrowing timeline of the shooting from within the confines of their home. XC recalled that prior to the chaos, their father had asked him to fill a bottle with water. As he made his way to the bathroom, the sound of 2 gunshots shattered the silence. His father leaped from bed and rushed toward the stairs, questioning the source of the noise. In that heart-stopping moment, XC heard his sister, RC, exclaim, "Raymond shot Elijah." A second gunshot rang out, followed by their father's anguished words, "I'm sorry, Raymond. I love you." At this point, XC remained trapped in the bathroom, but the terror was far from over. In a frantic bid for survival, Charles chased XC as he attempted to escape. Desperate, XC begged for his life, offering his older brother money in exchange for his safety. But the plea fell on deaf ears as Charles shot him in the leg, then again in the arm. Miraculously, XC managed to reach the safety of a neighbor's home. As sirens echoed in the distance, he was rushed to the hospital, where he would undergo a miraculous recovery despite the severity of his injuries. During the course of this investigation, detectives learned that 2 firearms had been involved. They recovered one in the basement of the family's home, but the other would require a tip to locate. A witness who had picked up Charles after the murder reported that when Charles III entered the vehicle, he was armed with a Draco firearm. This witness, known as AV, recognized the weapon as belonging to Raymond Charles Jr. AV insisted that Charles III surrender the gun, citing his own permit to carry, and Charles complied without hesitation. This moment would mark a turning point in the investigation, revealing the intricate web of relationships and violence that lay at the heart of this tragic case. The truth was slowly emerging from the shadows, but the journey to justice was far from over. As detectives sifted through the evidence and witness accounts, the chilling reality of that fateful night began to crystallize, leaving a community grappling with loss and a family forever altered by betrayal and violence. A witness, known as a V, immediately recognized the firearm as belonging to Raymond Childs Jr. In a moment that would echo in the courtroom, AV urged Childs III to surrender the gun, citing his legal permit to carry. Without resistance, Childs III complied, handing over the weapon that would become pivotal in the unfolding tragedy. The weapon, now in the hands of the police, revealed its deadly history as investigators matched spent shell casings found at the scene to this very firearm. Meanwhile, other casings linked back to a 9mm handgun discovered in the basement. With this crucial evidence laid bare, the jury delivered a guilty verdict. To dissect the intricacies of this case further, we turn to a special guest, the seasoned criminal defense attorney. Bobby Yankee, a former prosecutor and trusted voice in legal circles, stepped into the spotlight. He expressed gratitude for the opportunity to appear, sharing a warm camaraderie with the host. Bobby Yankee, with years of experience in the courtroom, reflected on the case. He noted that after decades of witnessing homicide trials, it was the sheer senselessness of this case that struck him most profoundly. He recounted his early days in the homicide squad, where cases often held a distinct, albeit grim, rationale. In those times, he and his colleagues would compare the absurdities of the cases they managed, acknowledging the underlying motives, even if they were horrific. Yet in this current case, the lack of a discernible motive left him unsettled. Bobby reflected on past experiences where motives had been rooted in money, drugs, gang violence, or infidelity, elements that, while tragic, provided some semblance of understanding. He recalled a particularly gruesome case where a pregnant woman had been doused in gasoline and set ablaze. Horrific as it was, the motivations behind such violence were always clear, creating a disturbing clarity amidst the chaos. Today, however, cases like this one present a different reality. Bobby expressed concern over a growing desensitization within society, where individuals seem unbound by moral constraints. He articulated a chilling observation. In moments of anger, there appears to be an immediate, almost instinctual reaction, an urge to lash out in the most extreme way possible. Bobby posited that this reflects deeper issues within society, a breakdown of moral standards and unaddressed mental health concerns. For someone like him, seasoned in homicide law, this calm demeanor in the face of violence was particularly troubling. In his role as both prosecutor and defense attorney, he considered how mental health defenses, such as passion provocation or insanity, might surface in trials. He explained the importance of analyzing behavior, what occurred before, during, and after the act. Throughout this case, Bobby noted a clear sense of purpose in the actions taken. However, the gravity of the response to the seemingly trivial stimulus, a father's disapproval of a relationship, was unfathomable. His initial impressions, while lengthy, reflected a deep concern as a defense lawyer. The complexities of this case, he mused, raised more questions than answers, leaving an indelible mark on his seasoned perspective. As the prosecutor and defense attorney observed the calmness in Childs 3's demeanor, they became acutely aware of the implications. In homicide cases, they often scrutinize the mental state of the accused, wary of defenses like passion provocation or insanity, which could alter the perception of the crime committed. The legal team meticulously examined the behavior leading up to the tragic events, focusing on the time just before, during, and after the crime. They sought to determine whether Childs acted with intention or purpose, recognizing a disturbing clarity in his decisions. Throughout the investigation, the evidence suggested that Childs acted with a chilling purpose. The catalyst for his horrific response was rooted in a seemingly trivial dispute: his father's insistence that he could not sleep with his girlfriend. This conflict ignited an unfathomable act of violence. The gravity of this response to such a minor provocation left an indelible mark on the case. A defense attorney, grappling with the weight of the evidence, expressed concern over how such a narrative could be perceived by a jury, especially when contemplating the complexities of mental health defenses. In a desperate attempt to establish a psychiatric defense, the urgency was palpable. The attorney knew he had to get Raymond Childs III evaluated by a psychologist without delay. What struck him profoundly were the emotional pleas from Raymond's family. His father tearfully expressed his love, while his younger brother, in a moment of sheer terror, begged for his life, pleading, "Please don't shoot me, don't kill me, I won't say anything." Yet, amidst these heart-wrenching appeals, Raymond continued his violent rampage, leaving behind a chilling reality: the ability to inflict such pain upon one's own family. The scene was haunting. The sheer brutality of a son turning against his own family members was unfathomable. There was no mercy shown, and that cold indifference clung to the air like a thick fog, an echo of horror that would linger long after the events had unfolded. The conversation shifted to the prosecution's perspective, and the attorney donned his metaphorical prosecutor's hat. They dissected the evidence methodically, seeking to uncover the strongest pieces that could seal Raymond's fate. With a keen analytical mind, he approached the case from every angle, considering what the defense might argue. He acknowledged the need to evaluate the evidence not just as a prosecutor, but through the lens of a defense attorney, assessing the potential challenges that might arise. In contemplating the defense's strategies, he realized that there was little to fear as a prosecutor. The evidence against Raymond was overwhelming, and he pondered the most significant piece that could impact the case. However, it wasn't a singular piece of evidence that stood out. It was the chilling nature of Raymond's reaction to the minimal provocation that truly resonated. The stark contrast between Raymond's calculated intent to kill and the mental incapacity seen in other cases weighed heavily on the attorney's mind. He had encountered defendants who were mentally unfit, unable to comprehend their actions. Yet in Raymond's case, the intent was glaringly evident, and his subsequent flight from the scene only underscored that clarity. The evidence piled up, a mountain of anguish, as family members' desperate statements echoed in the courtroom. Their pleas for mercy, particularly from his father and girlfriend, painted a harrowing picture of betrayal and despair. The prosecution's case was robust, a solid foundation upon which to build their argument. The defense attorney found himself grappling with the weight of the evidence. He acknowledged that this was not just another case. It was a battle against the odds. He understood the uphill struggle ahead, recognizing that the likelihood of a conviction and a life sentence for Raymond was almost certain. In his attempts to mount a defense, the attorney sought to highlight alleged investigative faults. There were claims of misidentification and the suggestion that if 2 guns were involved, 2 shooters must have been present. Perhaps there was a more sinister narrative lurking in the shadows, one that could sway the jury's perception. He speculated whether the defense might have played on the jury's emotions, questioning if they could truly believe that a mere teenager could commit such an atrocity. Would it not be more plausible that this was the work of multiple assailants? Despite these arguments, the jury remained unconvinced. They did not buy into the narrative that the defense attempted to weave, returning with a verdict in a mere 3 hours, a testament to the strength of the prosecution's case. The swiftness of their decision reflected a clear consensus. Raymond Childs III was guilty. The defense attorney, despite his efforts, understood that the reality of the situation was grim. In this case, justice would prevail. But at what cost to the shattered family left in the wake of such violence? The presence of 2 firearms raised troubling questions. It hinted at a more sinister plot, suggesting the possibility of multiple shooters. Speculation loomed that the defense might exploit the age of Childs III, framing him as an incapable teenager rather than a calculated murderer. The defense's argument questioned the plausibility of a teenager executing such a brutal act alone. Could it be that 2 individuals were responsible for the carnage? The defense leaned heavily into the idea of faulty investigations and misidentifications, yet the jury remained unconvinced. Despite the defense's attempts to sow doubt regarding the investigation and the possibility of multiple shooters, the jury's determination was resolute. They found no merit in the arguments presented, quickly dismissing the notion that anything but one individual was responsible. Indeed, the jury returned with a verdict in just 3 hours, indicating their swift rejection of the defense's claims. It was a stark reminder of the weight of the evidence against Childs III, and the chilling reality of his actions could not be ignored. In a passionate discourse, the seasoned defense attorney expressed his deep concern over the rampant issue of incomplete investigations plaguing the legal system. Drawing from his extensive experience as a former prosecutor, he shared insights into the troubling patterns he frequently encountered. He recounted the critical moments at crime scenes, where the urgency of a 911 call announcing a homicide often led investigators to rush to conclusions. The attorney highlighted the perilous consequences of confirmation bias, where the rush to judgment eclipsed the meticulous gathering of evidence. With a keen eye for detail, he had witnessed firsthand how easily individuals could overlook vital clues. He described the harrowing reality of being in a position of authority, where he had to urge his colleagues to exercise caution, to slow down, and to resist the instinct to leap to hasty assumptions. He recalled instances when initial thoughts about a case being a medical emergency or a suicide were later revealed to be sinister acts of murder. There were close calls, moments when innocent people narrowly escaped the grip of law enforcement due to faulty conclusions drawn in haste. The attorney knew the stakes were high. A careless investigation could lead to irreversible consequences, and he made it clear that challenging sloppy prosecutorial work was not just a personal mission, but a vital part of ensuring justice for all. He posed a thought-provoking question regarding the challenges faced by the prosecution in this particular case, noting it was the second trial after the first ended in a mistrial, sparked by a witness's unexpected confrontation with the defendant. The pressure mounted as the attorney reflected on the implications of such a mistrial, revealing that one juror had declared their inability to remain impartial after witnessing the dramatic exchange. The mention of a declared mistrial sent a chill through the courtroom. The attorney emphasized that this was the last thing a prosecutor wanted to hear, knowing the weight of expectations resting heavily upon them for the retrial. The tension was palpable as he acknowledged the unique challenges of retrying a case, likening it to a proverb about a river. One can never step into the same river twice, for the circumstances and the individuals involved are forever altered. As time passed and fresh transcripts emerged, the evolving narrative demanded a recalibration of the prosecution's approach, a task that often tilted the scales unfavorably for them. The attorney lamented the sloppiness he often observed among prosecutors, a critical misstep that made the journey through the legal labyrinth all the more treacherous. He understood the gravity of having to retry a case that had already faced such turmoil. He stressed that when a case is forced to reverse course, the prosecution rarely benefits from the experience. The scars of a prior mistrial linger, casting a long shadow over any new attempts to secure a conviction. The mention of witness misconduct and the challenges faced in this case loomed large, instilling a sense of dread in the attorney as he prepared for the uphill battle of retrial, knowing the emotional toll it would take. He took a moment, gathering his thoughts before shifting to the topic of sentencing. The conviction not only for murder but also for attempted murder carried severe consequences, with potential sentences that could imprison the young defendant for decades. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on everyone involved. The attorney pondered the fate of the 21-year-old, who now faced a grim future behind bars, contemplating whether he would ever see the outside world again. As the sentencing phase loomed, the gravity of the situation became apparent. With a potential sentence of 20 to 40 years for the murder, alongside a misdemeanor charge for carrying a firearm without a license, questions lingered. Would this 21-year-old ever step outside the confines of prison again? The uncertainty hung in the air, amplifying the tragic nature of the family's loss. In a complex discussion, the attorney conveyed a significant concern regarding the implications of age on culpability. While some argue that individuals under the age of 26 lack fully formed brains, a notion gaining traction in various legal circles, he remained skeptical. He noted that this argument has influenced sentencing in numerous cases, suggesting that society should grant younger offenders leniency. However, he strongly believed that the severity of this particular crime, given the numerous victims, warranted a maximum sentence. He emphasized that the gravity of the offense and the number of lives affected would likely compel the judge to impose the longest sentence permissible, especially concerning parole eligibility. He anticipated that, in the future, defense lawyers would argue that the defendant's youth and immaturity should result in a lesser sentence compared to an adult committing the same heinous acts. However, he firmly believed that the nature of this crime and the extensive number of victims would ultimately lead the judge to impose the maximum possible sentence, with little hope for parole. He pointed out that the family's reaction would also play a critical role in the proceedings. The emotional weight of the situation, particularly concerning the family of the pregnant woman involved, would be significant. He remarked that families often become vocal advocates for justice, and in many cases, the most persistent efforts can influence parole considerations. In this instance, he believed that the family's active involvement would likely hinder the defendant's chances for an early release. He pondered the defense strategy at sentencing, questioning whether the defendant would even make a statement. He considered whether the defense would call upon family members or friends to provide character references for the judge, seeking to mitigate the harshness of the sentence. Moreover, he speculated about the possibility of the judge imposing consecutive sentences for each victim rather than allowing them to run concurrently, which could have a significant impact on the total time served. He reflected on the many unanswered questions that loomed over the case and emphasized the complexities surrounding the judge's potential decisions. In a strategic move, the defense attorney would likely highlight any mental health issues that could explain the defendant's actions, suggesting that a lack of understanding regarding the crime's gravity stemmed from psychological challenges. Though it might not qualify as a legal defense, such arguments could certainly influence the judge's decisions regarding the severity of the sentence, particularly in the context of consecutive versus concurrent sentencing. The attorney acknowledged the inherent contradictions within the law, while some argue that no crime is free of consequence and each victim deserves a separate sentence. Others point to instances where multiple crimes committed during a single event should be treated as one. Given his vast experience and the serious nature of the case, he found it nearly inconceivable that the judge could opt for anything less than consecutive sentences in this scenario. As he turned to Bob, he reminded the audience of Bob's credentials as a certified EMT, hinting at another harrowing aspect of the case that had yet to be explored. In a harrowing twist of fate, the surviving brother, XC, endured gunshot wounds to both his leg and arm. Against all odds, he managed to rise and stagger to a neighbor's home, clinging to life long enough to reach the hospital. His survival transformed him into a crucial witness in this chilling case. As Jesse Weber pondered this astonishing survival, he reflected on his encounters with catastrophic shootings during his tenure as an emergency medical technician. The resilience of the human spirit, he noted, often defies comprehension. In his years on the job, he had witnessed injuries that left him marveling at how individuals could still cling to life, while others succumbed to seemingly minor wounds. The unpredictability of such tragedies haunted him. With every emergency call, the uncertainty loomed large. Upon arrival, the scene often revealed itself as a chaotic tableau of pain and desperation. From the EMT's perspective, the weight of responsibility was immense. Massive law enforcement and EMS responses were essential in mass casualty incidents like this. The chaos demanded swift and sometimes heart-wrenching decisions. Each choice could mean the difference between life and death for those involved. There were moments when a medic would have to leave an individual behind, knowing they might not survive the journey to the hospital. They had to prioritize those with the best chance of survival, decisions that would haunt them for a lifetime. The emotional toll of such choices weighed heavily, yet in this case, the presence of a survivor became a beacon of hope for prosecutors who marveled at XC's resilience. As an EMT, Jesse acknowledged the bittersweet reality of XC's survival amidst the tragedy. The number of individuals who had survived shootings was surprisingly higher now than in previous decades, a small comfort in a grim reality. However, it was heart-wrenching to reflect on the suffering of the 15-year-old, who had witnessed the brutal loss of his entire family, all at the hands of his own brother. The weight of his testimony would be immense. The miracle of his survival stood in stark contrast to the sorrow of loss. As the case unfolded, the community's empathy was palpable. The pain of the family left behind resonated deeply. As the clock ticked down to January 7th, when Raymond Childs III was scheduled to be sentenced, the courtroom awaited the judge's decision, a moment steeped in tension and anticipation. In a moment of closure, Bobby Bianchi expressed gratitude for his appearance on the show, acknowledging the gravity of the discussion. Jesse thanked him in return, concluding a somber yet necessary dialogue. As the segment wrapped up, Jesse Weber invited listeners to join them again, urging them to subscribe for updates on this heart-wrenching case and the many stories that needed to be told. With a heavy heart, he signed off, leaving the audience with the somber reminder of the fragility of life and the scars left by such tragic events. This was not just a story of survival. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit amidst unimaginable loss. Jesse Weber, signing off, promising to return with more insights into the world of true crime.